Okay, so we are still here in the sleep line, and we just spoke about schedule changes. We spoke about what to do when your child is ready to transition from 3 naps to 2 naps, 2 naps to 1 nap, or to even drop that nap completely. And those are all inevitable things. But another thing that's something very common that we can't necessarily control are setbacks and hurdles in our life. Setbacks and hurdles that can cause our children to be thrown off their sleep line. So I want to talk about some common ideas first. I obviously am not going to be able to go through every single situation and possible scenario because there are a lot, but this main idea that you're going to apply with these examples I'm going to talk about can be really, really applicable to any type of situation. So let's first talk about throwbacks that can happen very commonly, which is sickness, illness. Your baby gets sick, your baby gets a fever, your toddler gets shots, anything and everything. They have a stomach ache, they're teething. These are constant things that happen. We always want our children to be safe, be healthy, but obviously these are things that can definitely throw off your sleep line. So I want to talk about what to do when your child is ill, what to do when your child is unwell. I will never, ever advocate leaving a sick baby, a baby with a fever, a baby that's not feeling well, a child that needs your love, a toddler that needs to be held in their crib to cry. Never, ever, ever. Even if they're a champion sleeper all the time, when your child is sick, they need you. They need TLC, they need you to be there for them, and they need you to love them and help them get over whatever they can get over whatever they have. And in order to do that, they need to sleep. And the only way they're going to sleep when they're not feeling well is you holding them, or you rocking them possibly, or you being more involved, because when a child is sick, they need you as their parent. And there's nothing to discuss there, and it's not negotiable, okay? But what I want to talk to you about is what happens when the child gets better. Very often, you'll have a child that sleeps through the night beautifully, suddenly gets sick, and when they're sick, they come into the parents' bed. Or when they're sick, they're having bottles all night. Or when they're sick, they're nursing all night. Because like I told you, your child is sick, you need to be there for them and do whatever you can to help them feel better and whatever you can to comfort them. But what happens is 2 days after your child is better, no longer sick, a week into it, suddenly you have a baby that is up all night again being nursed. Or a toddler that's in your bed again all night, or a child that's asking for bottles all night, because what happens is when they were sick, they got used to the habits that you gave them, got used to the situations that you gave them. Again, they weren't feeling well, but now that they're not better, they expect the same environment, because I want to tell you that old habits are forgotten very quickly and new ones can take shape even faster. So when they're sick, you got to do whatever you can. Got to be there for them, got to help them. The question arises is what to do, and this is what we're going to talk about, what to do when your child is better to get back onto your sleep line. So 2-3 days after you're confident that your child doesn't have a fever anymore, you're confident their stomach doesn't hurt, you're confident they're not teething anymore, you know that things are in a better place, what should you do? Get right back onto your sleep line. And how you do that is by one of two ways. Either going full force back into their, stick them back in their crib, and that's the ideal situation. They know how to sleep. It's not as if you have to retrain them or reteach them and spend 2 weeks now going through the whole gentle phase out method again. No, they already know how to do this. You just have to remind them. So step number 1 is put them back in their crib and leave the room. Exactly like they were sleeping beautifully through the night before. Now, what's going to potentially happen is that your child's going to protest. They're going to cry. They're going to be upset because, oh my goodness, mommy, I was in your bed the past week and a half when I was sick. I want that again. Or what happened to the nursing or the bottles or the touching and the cuddling? I want that again. So even though they know how to do it, it's not fair to suddenly magically expect them to remember. So if you recall, when we were teaching them how to sleep through the night, we slowly and gradually phased you out of the picture. But now what we're going to do is slowly and gradually phase you back in the picture, but at a very limited time frame. What do I mean by this? Okay, so your baby's better. He's not sick anymore. You put him in the crib, you leave the room. What happens? He cries. So do the last phase. Stand outside the room, let him hear you, not see you. Lightly talk to him, lightly shush him. Okay, that doesn't work. Go back and phase yourself in a little more. Sit at the midpoint in front of his door, or sit at the midpoint in his room and talk to him. Let him see you. If that doesn't work, fine. Then go back and involve yourself even more. Sit next to him. Let him see you right there, but don't touch him. That's still not working. I would even tell you to go back to full touch if you need to for that initial night or two to get him back used to it. But after you spend 1 or 2 nights on full touch, then phase out again. Another night, sit midpoint. Phase out again. Another night, sitting right in front of the door. Phase out again. Another night outside of the room where he can hear you and not see you. Back to business. So even if your baby has a full-fledged negative response and is really upset when they're put back in their crib, You move back into it, try standing outside of the door, try to first have minimal intervention and phase yourself in as necessary. So if you have to stand outside the room, fine, and shush them and let them have that verbal reassurance, fine. If it's still not working, phase in, phase in, phase in, phase in to the ultimate most involvement that you would have is full touch. I wouldn't recommend holding and nursing and bouncing and patting and shushing because that's exactly what you did when they were sick. That's what we're trying to go against. And then after that's working again, spend 2 nights or so maybe, phase yourself out, phase yourself out. The whole process shouldn't take maximum of 4 or 5 days to get them back on their sleep line. And this is where people get thrown off because they have a sick baby, a sick child, they revert back to old habits, and suddenly a baby that was sleeping through the night has suddenly been up for 5 weeks straight, having bottles every hour. You got to get back to business here, and the quicker you get back to your sleep line after your child's been sick, the better they're going to respond because they remember, and you're not teaching them from the scratch. You don't have to uproot crazy habits. They know how to do it. You just have to remind them how to do it, but in a gentle fashion. So you phase yourself back in as necessary, and then phase yourself back out again, not spending more than 4 or 5 nights total on the whole process. And the same thing goes for when you're traveling or whether your child has jet lag. You know, I don't sleep when I'm in a new bed. It's unfair to expect my child to magically sleep when they're in a new bed. It's a different pillow, it's a different cover, it's a different smell, it's a different sleep environment. So it's the same thing when you're sick. When you're traveling, you got to do whatever you can just to roll with the punches. Your baby might be used to sleeping in his own room, but suddenly he's in a crib next to you or with a sibling, and it's a totally different environment. You might need to end up touching him all night or nursing him or helping him because you're traveling and you don't want to wake up the entire hotel or you want to enjoy your vacation and not feel like you're bound to sleep training. It's fine. When you're traveling, things happen. Just like when your child is sick, you got to roll with the punches. But right when you get back home, back to normal sleeping environments, back to normal crib, you get right back into business. In his crib, in his room, all by himself, you leave the room. But if he gets really upset because you were away on a trip for a week and had him sleeping in your own bed with you so you wouldn't wake up your aunt who was sleeping across the hall. So you stand outside the room, maybe go backwards because he's really upset when you left. I'm going to stand outside and give him some verbal reassurance. Talking, shushing. He's still really upset. Go to the midpoint in the room. Still really upset. Go backwards even more. Sit next to him. Still really upset and protesting. So worst case scenario, touch him and do that for a full night or 2. But then phase yourself out again, back to the midpoint, back to outside where he can hear you, not see you, to eventually not being there at all. And the faster you get back into that sleep line, the faster and better he's going to respond because you don't suddenly have him being up all night expecting to be in your bed for weeks and weeks and weeks on end because you spent a few days getting him back to his sleep line. And that's just life, the tumult we call life. The only thing we control is the fact that our kids are always changing, which basically means we control nothing. You know, this lady here has her bags flying and the kid flying and this one being in that direction because there's things always happening. Kids are always, having developmental milestones. You're traveling, things are changing, and there's no control variables that we can ever have. But if you know you have a solid sleep line in place and a solid baseline in place, you're not going to have to be concerned or feel nervous or feel obsessive compulsive about your child's sleep because you know you have that foundation set up and okay, things will be thrown off. I'll get back onto my sleep line. And that's the beauty of it, balancing it all, being in tune with your child, knowing what their needs are, but also knowing that you can always get back to that line if and when necessary.